Sustainability is no longer something that's just a specialist subject, but it really needs to be culturally, needs to be embedded into everything we do.
Welcome back to Infrastructure Connections, the podcast where we explore what makes sustainable infrastructure work. Brought to you by the Infrastructure Sustainability Council, I'm your host, Seth Scott, and today we'll be speaking with Evelyn Storey. Evelyn is Aurecon's Director of Eminence and Sustainability and has been with the business for more than 20 years. Graduating from Imperial College in London, Evelyn has over 35 years' experience as a structural engineer and has successfully led multidisciplinary design teams for complex and award-winning buildings in both Australia and the UK. Evelyn has a passion for elegant and sustainable design of engineering structures. She sits on Aurecon's board and is immediate past chair of Engineer Australia's Structural College Board. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Seth.
Tell us about your background. You were educated in London, you worked as an engineer there for some time, and now you've been with Aurecon for over 20 years. What's the overarching driver of your career?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure I've got an overarching driver, but yes, as you said, I spent the first half of my career in London. I'm a structural engineer by background, so I was working predominantly in building structural design in the UK. And since I moved to Australia with Aurecon, I've been, I suppose, much more involved in what you might call operational roles, so various business unit leader roles. But I think the common theme in all of that is I've always retained a close connection to engineering design. I've always, despite my profit and loss, P&L type responsibilities, I've always retained a close connection to projects and to clients. And I think that's probably been the overarching theme of my career is wanting to remain close to what we do as a business, to actually creating and delivering projects for our clients.
And you're now the Director of Eminence and Sustainability for Aurecon. It's the first time I've heard the term eminence used in a job role. So if you could tell us a little bit about what it means for you and what's the eminence mindset.
Yeah, look, it is an unusual job title. I have to say, I often do have to explain what that means. It comes with a sort of a little subtitle. But I think really in Aurecon terms, we talk about eminence as being both the focus on technical excellence, but also the meaningfulness of that, if you like. So we all understand in a consultancy world how important it is to have technical expertise, to have credibility, to have built that deep technical expertise that you deliver on projects. But really that means nothing if it hasn't got credibility with our clients, if it doesn't actually translate to something that's useful to them. So we talk about eminence really at Aurecon as being that mixture of both deep technical expertise, but also in a way that is useful to our clients. So whether that's, within my portfolio are things like our graduate technical mastery program, but also our design academy, which is really the program for our most senior professionals. And they're all connecting staff to both building their technical excellence, but also ensuring that we retain close connectivity to what our clients are telling us, what the markets are telling us are most relevant and needed.
And you'd spoken on the importance of culture previously. How does that play into that role?
Oh, super important. So, I mean, my full role title has Eminence and Sustainability in the title. So you might say unusual bedfellows, but in actual fact, both of them are equally important in how we deliver services to our clients. And culture is really almost as important as the technical skills that we have. I guess when I first spoke about that importance of culture in delivering sustainability, it was probably a good couple of years ago now. And I think that was the start of the journey for many in the industry as we started to move from sustainability as something that was, or even eminence, something that was actually delivered by specialists. And we gradually move now to the importance of it actually being embedded in everything that we do. Sustainability is no longer something that's just a specialist subject, although we do have people with deep expertise in various sustainable services. But it really needs to be culturally, needs to be embedded into everything we do. So every single one of our engineers, every single one of our project managers needs to deliver sustainable thinking as part of the project. So culture comes first, really. Everyone's got to be on board. You've got to build knowledge. People have to feel comfortable understanding what the levers they can pull in their role are in relation to sustainability. And I think that's the cultural piece.
What parts of sustainability do you find yourself working on the most?
Well, that's changed as well a lot over the last couple of years. So when we first introduced our Sustainability by Design program, we called it a good 2.5 years ago. Our focus was really on just building literacy across our entire workforce. So delivering a knowledge program, making them all feel comfortable in talking to their clients about sustainability. And a big part of that, I think, at the time was probably embodied carbon. That was it was a good starting point because it drove many of our staff to think about materials usage and the efficiency of what they were designing. I think as time has gone on now, as I said, we've moved to this point where sustainability is really embedded into our core services. I mean, we talk about sustainability is really just good engineering. But I think the conversation has moved on from just, I suppose, embodied carbon, which is particularly focused on the design and I suppose, the creation of an asset for a client to now we're looking at resilience and longevity of assets, how we extend their life, whether we should extend their life or replace them. If we're extending lives, what are the design criteria that an asset might face into the future? So climate change and scenarios, so a much broader range, I think, of topics now. But I guess underpinning all of that would be this idea of resilience, I think, would probably play into a lot of what we're doing. And alongside, I mean, decarbonisation is clearly always going to be an important topic, but they're sort of the yin and yang of the discussion that you might have on whether you're building a new asset or extending the life of an existing one.
Do you see engineers coming in with more information on sustainability than previously, whether they're coming out of university or just from their time in the field?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's actually pretty difficult for someone who works in consulting engineering to not have good, solid knowledge now. In fact, they would be fairly quickly irrelevant, to be honest, if they didn't have some core skills. But yes, we find our graduates are joining us with good awareness, and I think that's probably driven from their own sense of self as well and their interest and passion for the topic. But they have been introduced to core concepts in their undergraduate studies, which is great. It means they're coming in with a core level of knowledge. But we build on that through our knowledge program, our sustainability knowledge program. But as I said, we've moved really from something that was 2.5 years ago would have been, we called it sustainability by design, and it was very much about building base knowledge and awareness consistently, to now sustainability in practice. So it's we now we take that base knowledge for granted. We support where necessary, and we're looking to support our teams in how they take that conversation to the client and use those skills.
It's so important that you give them the groundwork and lay the principles before they speak to the client so that they know how to present it in a way that's the client is going to appreciate. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that we always say to our teams, they're not expected to be experts. And so we do have sustainability practitioners who have deep expertise across a range of topics. But our teams need to be able to, our staff need to be able to talk to their client about their particular area. So if they are a structural engineer like me, they can talk about material selection, embodied carbon. They can talk about design life and materials. And things that are relevant to them. We're not expecting them to go and talk about biodiversity or decarbonisation. So we definitely feed that information and provide that support in the areas of expertise that they need to have.
And you'd written that sustainability plays a role in whether or not to start a project or whether it gets finished. Where do you see the risks involved in starting a project without sustainability involved?
Major projects in particular face so many risks in delivery, and our clients are ultimately looking for certainty that it's not, we can't always provide, but certainty of delivery, certainty of costs, and certainty of time, and that the asset they receive at the end is fit for purpose. I think the sustainability aspect of that is really understanding in an uncertain world, what are the range of scenarios that asset might, whether it's a building or a road, or a piece of an Olympic stadium maybe. What is the future going to hold for that asset? What are the climate scenarios? What are the population scenarios? You name it. I think that's where sustainability comes in. You can you bring to the table almost a philosophical conversation about what the client is wanting to get from that particular asset, and then what are the likely responses. So it might not be framed. I think we would rarely go into a conversation like that framing it as if it was a sustainability conversation, but it is nonetheless. It's about how that asset will be sustainable into the future, given its life and the client's aspirations.
I guess that's what makes it so encouraging that we're seeing it incorporated early into major projects now. Aurecon has been working on some very large projects and seen some spectacular sustainability results. What are some of the projects that you've seen that you're most proud of, and what were those outcomes?
As I said, I'm a building structural engineer, and I started my my sort of design work as a graduate engineer back in London. And I've been interested to see through the arc of my career how the use of timber has actually gone from what was actually quite common usage in the UK, but in a much smaller scale, to what we're seeing now in terms of mass engineered timber. So back in London, a lot of availability of European softwoods. Timber was often included in our projects, in actual fact. But when I moved to Australia 20 years ago, that was really, there was a lot less timber in usage in the sort of work we were doing. I was very fortunate to work on 2 or 3 glueland buildings we did for Brisbane City Council that were aquatic centres, which was the first time I'd seen timber used, and another beautiful auditorium we did for UQ, probably 10, 15 years ago now. But what's been really interesting is to see the rise of mass engineered timber. So Aurecon were involved in the office building that I now work in at 25 King, which was the tallest commercial mass engineered timber building, still is, in Australia, through some other projects, and onto our team, designing the award-winning Bula-Catagin building, which was for Murdoch University over in Western Australia. An absolutely beautiful building that combines, I guess, beautiful sense of place for the students over there in Western Australia, but also the best of mass engineered timber technology and supply chains and engineering design. So it's been fantastic to see, I suppose, that arc of where we've got to now, and how much a building like that provides such a great sense of place, but also amazing sustainability outcomes in terms of reduction of material use. So long may that continue. Let's on to the next ones. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So you're a big advocate of extending life of existing assets. That's very much in line with the moment. What are some of the tools that we have to maintain and renew existing infrastructure that might not have prioritized in the past that we have now?
I think what we're seeing now is the rise in the rise of the AI environment, is much more ability to look across a range of potential scenarios for that asset, whether that's a range of climate scenarios or population scenarios, economic scenarios, and what that might mean to make smart decisions. So yes, we're able to tweak and investigate and model so much more than we could even 5 years ago.
Well, there are a lot of exciting things coming up in sustainability and climate. Where do you see the next big things coming down the pike?
Sustainability is good engineering. I mean, that's really what it's actually really efficient engineering, minimizing waste, absolutely delivering to the scope or the brief, the design criteria that are required, and no more, with really good integrated into the supply chain really well, so that whatever we are specifying is available, will have a lifespan that is appropriate, that is maintainable into the future, and will be resilient to the shocks that are likely to come, whether those are environmental or economic or population or whatever. So I think you can't separate out sustainability from anything else, from actually all of those other risks. It's just an integral part of project delivery now. So as I've said a few times now, I think embedding it, giving our, ensuring that, the entire engineering workforce really has that front of mind as we deliver these projects is going to be key to our profession remaining, credible and trusted into the future.
Aurecon has quite a few projects with the IS rating. What role do you think the Infrastructure Sustainability Council plays in helping Australia's organizations become more sustainable?
The rating tool is obviously credible and trusted. I think the role of the council is so much more than a rating tool, because it's actually about having an industry standing. I think being a connector and a communicator and an advocate. I think when I think of ISC, I think of that respected voice in the industry that is advocating, connecting for good best practice. So much more than just the rating tool itself. And I think that goes hand in hand with the education piece. It's about upskilling our workforce. I often think, I feel very fortunate that I work for an organisation like Aurecon, who invests in upskilling our workforce and ensuring that we are, every single one of our staff is able to deliver that best practice to our clients. But we're a very broad industry. Not everyone has access to those same tools, learning opportunities, or being challenged to think about what they could do better. But I think ISC as an industry body has really fulfilled that for across the range of our industry and brought the whole playing field up, if you like.
Well, what's one piece of advice you'd give our audience that they should act on?
Look, I think it comes back to learning again, Seth. I think having that learning mindset, nothing ever stands still. If I think about my career, and I'm definitely one of those people who's at the tail end of their career rather than at the start. But if I think of how much industry has changed, back in my London days, sustainability wasn't really even a word that would have been spoken about in those terms. We just didn't think about what we were doing in terms of material selection, usage, waste. It simply wasn't on our radar. The first decade of my life, my career, I would have said. And now I think about how much has changed in that period to now at the tail end of my career, where it's really embedded in pretty much everything we consider. The amount of learning I've had to do along the way has been huge, and I think that's what I'd encourage everyone else to consider. I think AI might be quite transformative. It may not. It's impossible to tell at the moment. But there's no doubt that our industry is going to change a huge amount over the next decade. And therefore, keeping an open mind, keeping that learning mindset always, whether it's listening to podcasts, reading, attending courses, stepping outside our comfort zones and learning from other disciplines, other professions, all of that helps us all move forward well. So keep that learning mindset would be my advice.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's really reassuring to hear how far we've come. And thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
And thank you for listening to another episode of Infrastructure Connections. Please take a moment to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and we want to know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below to let us know what you think. Stay tuned for the next episode of Infrastructure Connections.